Hello, everyone. My name is John Barnshaw. I'm the Vice President for Higher Education Success at Emsi Burning Glass, and I'd like to share with you today some leading insights for the future of work. A little bit about myself is I like to actually engage my audience. So because we're virtual and remote here, I'd love for you to reach out to me. And it can be a simple email, doesn't have to be formal or anything like that. Just say, John, I'd like to learn more about what you covered today. I want to know more about analytics in education and work, or I specifically want to follow up on one of the studies that you talked about here today. Just send me a very brief, short email. That's fine. You can tweet at me. My Twitter handle is @JohnBarnshaw, or you can direct message me there or reach out on LinkedIn. You can just search John Barnshaw Emsi, or in the presentation that's going to be available to you, you can click these links moving forward. So a little bit about Emsi Burning Glass is that it's the leading labor market analytics company. We work with about education, and we have over 900 million job postings. I'd like to remind you all that we have 125 million unique postings, which means that that's to them a little bit more impressive, the ability that we can search out and find unduplicated job postings. In 2021, earlier this year, Emsi merged with Burning Glass. And so we have one of the largest labor market analytics companies in the world. Many of you might already be familiar with Emsi, and if you think career services before student success, then this presentation is for you. So traditionally think about student success and the student success life cycle. We often think about enrollment, retention, persistence, and then graduation. And that's kind of the definition of student success, that if you graduate, then you have aspired and you have achieved a certain level of educational attainment, which is what you were going for. Researchers use educational attainment all the time, and that's kind of the end game or the destination that you arrive at. To challenge that assumption today, because I don't really believe that the student success life cycle is really about graduation. I mean, maybe as a student, but most of us are going to need to be lifelong learners in the rest of this 21st century, and we need to be a little more responsive in how we think about things in higher ed. And I'm not just basing that on my own personal views or beliefs, but it's really what listening to the data and hearing what students actually say. If you look at the beginning of the student life cycle, the University of California, Los Angeles, for about 40 years, they've been conducting what's called the freshman survey. In that freshman survey, the question, and the question is, what is the most important thing to you, or why did you go to college? And 83% of first-year students say that they attend college to be able to get a better job. That's the #1 response. It's higher than to learn more about a particular area or get a well-rounded education. They are fundamentally going to college to get a better job. So for them, at the beginning of the process, the educational attainment is just one step towards that college career pathway. A colleague of mine, Dave Clayton, has actually contributed to a book chapter that I'm co-editing. And in his book chapter, Dave and his colleagues, Nicole Torpey-Sabo and Paul Fain, they discuss student support. So during the academic career of students, as they're going through it and looking at it and thinking about the beginning of their labor market experiences, they ask in their education consumer survey, they ask a couple questions about student perceptions. Do you think your education was worth the cost? And did you think that your institution provided meaningful or institutional supports for a meaningful career? That is, did you have linkages between what you were learning in college and what you think will apply in the real world? Well, for those who actually said, yes, I think that my education was worth the costs, They had excellent institutional supports. That's about 83%. You can see going down the line there that if people had poor institutional supports on the career services, they were less likely to believe that education was worth the cost. When we look into the labor force, recently Gallup has done some research and they asked two questions. One is, do you strongly agree that education was worth the cost? And do you believe you received a quality education? Well, there's a very strong linkage between educational relevance of value and quality. For those that said yes to both and strongly agreed that education was worth the cost, about 77% of those people who thought that education was worth the cost also believed that they received a quality education, particularly as it related to skills that align closely with the labor market. So at the beginning of the college pathways and the first year experience, students going through the process, and then as people have looked back on their educational career, that alignment is so important between the career and what you're learning in college. So I think kind of extending this out a little bit, we really need to start redefining student success as being able to find meaningful work in your career and aligning those college and career pathways so that what you learn in the classroom is relevant for what goes beyond in your career. And that is what students are wanting, and that's what student success is. So I talked a little bit about the student value of that in terms of this is what students want. 83% of students that are in their first year want to go to college to get a better job. They're more satisfied when when their future work is closely aligned to what they learn in college, and they see better value in it. There's also a case to be made in terms of public value. So as the tuition increases, particularly the cost of attendance goes up, people are seeing some sticker shock, and that shock is actually causing them to question whether higher education is worth it. So by demonstrating that there is clear value in the labor in college, will continue to improve the value of higher education generally and specifically among certain programs. There's also a policymaker value. By demonstrating this is what policymakers want also. Since about 2018, 30 states in the District of Columbia have actually passed workforce development policies that seek to align that college and career pathway. So if you're already doing this work with your Promise program and with Promise programs generally, that's all the better to actually continue doing what you're doing. If you're not, this is time to think about it. And over the next few minutes, I'll show you some things and some strategies and tactics for how we at Easy Burning Glass can perhaps help you. Okay, so Promise programs. At the very beginning, through the student success life cycle, when we're talking about students first go to college, a lot of times they have to pick a major. It's one of the first things that you're supposed to do. And if you're undeclared or undecided, generally the best practice now is to put students in a meta major. So if you're unfamiliar with what a meta major is, those are kind of broader categories like social science, health professions. You're not sure if you want to be a doctor or a nurse, and so they'll put you in an allied health sciences meta major. The idea is that you'll take chemistry, biology, classes like that in a health profession that you're going to need whether you're in biology or chemistry. Same thing in the social sciences, intro to psychology, sociology, communication, those kinds of classes. It doesn't matter what major you pick at the end, you'll need those kinds of things. So many students begin their academic careers in meta majors. The reason why this is important is for Promise programs, particularly among two-year institutions, as they begin their programs, people who are more likely to be in a meta major versus a mid major are underrepresented minorities, first-generation students. And so as a result, if we are trying to provide greater access through Promise programs for underrepresented minority students, and for first generation students, then it's important to think about the trajectory. It's also important to think about that as they declare a major. So sometimes most students do not graduate in 4 years. In fact, only about 43% of first-time full-time students graduate in 4 years. And that the first-time full-time is kind of the best case scenario. Many students might begin first-time and then they don't end up as full-time as they progress through their academic career. But the graduate is by being a full-time student. Only 43% of students nationwide graduate in 4 years. A big chunk of them end up graduating in 62%. And from my research and the research of other people, what we found is that one of the major reasons why people they end up graduating in 6 years, but not 4 years, is a change of major. They're declaring multiple majors across their academic history. So the sooner we can identify where the strengths lie for students and what they're interested in, the greater likelihood it is that we can have them graduate on time. Now, that obviously has benefits for promise programs where if we can keep the cost down, then we can actually graduate more students or provide more resources to the same students if we can graduate them faster. One other thing to note is among the 6-year graduation, that 62% looks pretty good. If you're in an open enrollment institution is having selectivity of 10% or basically admitting 90% of the students, then that means that only 33% of students graduate from open enrollment access institutions. So something to think about. The inverse is probably true. I think that it's close to 85% of students that go to a highly selective institution, which has about a 90% rejection rate. Those institutions actually have a very, very high graduation rate. So something to think about with who we are serving as part of the Promise programs. Help at Emsi Burning Glass is we can help students find success in their meta major sooner rather than later. And one of the ways that we do that is through a solution called Career Coach. What Career Coach really does is it says, okay, so you've picked business management and administration, which is actually the largest degree program in the country. Lots of students start off as business majors. There are a lot of things that you can become as a business major, whether it's in marketing, business analytics, finance and accounting, human resources management. All of those fields and professions fall under business management at most institutions. So if you just say, well, I think I'd want to earn enough money to kind of support myself or support my family in the future. So business seems like a good track. First generation student, my uncle majored in business or something like that. So seems like a good place to start. We can help you find your career sooner. How do we do that? By looking at job postings and labor market analytics data, we can tee up some of the insights. So if you're interested in say, well, I want to try marketing, that sounds pretty interesting. There's different fields within marketing that we can tee up, and you can see advertising and promotions. About 62% of people in advertising have a bachelor's degree. So it's important to go on and get that bachelor's degree if you're a 2-year institution, as only 8% of people have that position with an associate's degree. You can also see the median salary there. And also maybe if you're interested in saying, well, there's a lot of new jobs I'm hearing about through a recently passed infrastructure bill, focuses on some of Green Deal initiatives. Maybe I want to focus on green marketing, which is basically looking at products and services associated that are environmentally friendly and sustainable. You can kind of drill into that. We partnered with a lot of institutions across the country. I mentioned we work with over 1,000. One of the examples here, you can see Old Dominion University. You can see, so if you were a student enrolled at Old Dominion University, you can just click on this and say, okay, I want to study green marketing. I can click on the program information and learn a little bit about that. If I actually are a prospective student, you can click on it and start your application. Clicking on it, it will actually show you why Old Dominion University marketing works for you, what kinds of classes you need to take, and how you can complete your degree online. It's so important in that momentum year. A colleague of mine at Astra, Sarah Collins, will be presenting the College Promise campaign during this conference. Check them out. They're doing wonderful work on the momentum year and the importance of that for Promise programs. If you're still not certain after looking at all that kind of stuff, there's an opportunity to take an assessment where we can kind of look at some of the skills that you might have. 6 questions or 60, 6 questions if you don't have a lot of time, 60 questions if you're thinking, well, this might actually be what I do with the rest of my life. We can provide a couple different types of assessments that align the skills and interests that you have with other career fields. So that can be enormously helpful in getting students into the right pathway as quickly as possible. So helping those students get clarification if they're meta majors, or if it doesn't work out in your first or second major, having a backup that is well aligned to your interest as well as your course offerings. Kind of the external program demand. So a lot of organizations focus on internal demand, which is kind of the idea of are we making sure that we have the right number of students in the right sections and the right courses and stuff like that. What we particularly focus on at Emsi Burning Glass is external demand. So looking at what skills are required in the labor market. Is the labor market projected to expand or contract? Who's hiring, and how much can students expect to earn in those fields? All things that lots of students and parents, the public, policymakers are all interested in. So here's an example from an institution I recently worked with in New York. It's upstate New York. So there was graphic design. So what you can see here is the dark blue lines are the frequency that these skills appear for graphic design in that regional area in job postings. The lighter blue line is the frequency that those skills appear in the workforce profiles, whether that's Workforce ADP or PayScale or LinkedIn. We're scraping all of that data and providing some insights. So when the lines are pretty close, you can see there's a match where graphic designers are actually looking for graphic designers, and having graphic design is an important skill if you want to be a graphic designer. However, Adobe is one of the important skills, and Adobe appears 2 or 3 times on the top 10 skills. What was with this department was actually for the chair of the department to see that I know that Adobe is important. We teach Adobe in our graphic design program. What I didn't realize is that I need to specify, rather than just say, Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, Creative Suite, emphasizing those things. She taught cascading style sheets as well. What she didn't realize is just how much in-demand CSS was in her area. So on some level, providing some confirmatory analysis, maybe providing some exploratory understanding of, hey, branding is a skill, you might want to think more about that. Those kinds of things are insights that we can provide. And we can make sure that students are learning what they need to learn, and that faculty can kind of emphasize what skills are in demand. Job postings. We have a lot of research on job postings. You can see these data are post-pandemic and what the labor market is going to look like in that region. So you can see it's pretty flat, but at least the jobs haven't gone down in graphic design, that the market has stabilized and it's projected to stabilize throughout the rest of the decade. We can make forecasts about that, as well as how it might work. Your regional area might be similar or different to the state you're in, or a national average of a comparable area. So a lot to think about there in terms of what kinds of insights we can offer in that regard. It's also important to know who is hiring in your area and how hard they are finding, or the work they're undertaking to find the talent that they need. You can see here Colgate University. So this was a 2-year institution that we were working with, 4-year institution right in their backyard. There's an opportunity for universities hire graphic designers. And so that's an opportunity for somebody to continue. working with a consulting group that is a great opportunity that they didn't realize that they were hiring so many graphic designers because they were new to the area. For workforce job boards, this is so important as we talk about a careers institute, about the importance of working with local businesses in the area, a topic which I'll talk about more. And then the opportunity to actually see how much people are making relative to your peers and relative to the current labor market. What's interesting about here is while 22% might seem lower, $40,000 is actually a pretty good salary in this area of upstate New York. Houses go for about $80,000 or $90,000. So $40,000 a year might not be much nationally, but in this region, it actually pays pretty well. So if we look at this and we take a step back for a minute and we read, if you talk to CAOs, and a colleague of mine, Brandon Boostede, did this. He used to work at Gallup, and when he did this, this was the Chief Academic Officer survey that's run through Inside Higher Ed. If some of you are Chief Academic Officers here, you might have been familiar or might have actually responded to this survey. 95% of CAOs or provosts think that their institution is very or somewhat effective at preparing students for work. In a separate survey, Gallup also surveyed undergraduates, and they found that 34% thought that they were graduating with the job market skills that they need. They also surveyed hiring managers, and hiring managers believe that only 11% of graduating students had the skills that they needed for business. So there's clearly a gap between 95 and 11%. I'm going to talk a little bit about how fill that gap, and by filling that gap, how we can hope to better demonstrate value to the public for those of us that are in higher ed and are committed to promise programs. So give you an example of why I don't think that gap is as big as it is. Not too long ago, I was working with a colleague in Detroit, Michigan, and the colleague was in a management information systems program. He was actually the chair of the department, and I was sharing with him some of these skills that are available from Emsi Burning Glass. The number 3 skill is project management. On that in their profile that they had project management experience, although almost everybody learns it in an MIS program. Also showed him this, and when I pointed to Agile, which is a software business continuity planning, a software development process, he interrupted me and said, "I teach Agile to all of my students." I said, "Well, did you think about actually seeing if they put it in their profile?" And he said, "I thought that's what career services did." And I said, "Well, sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't necessarily know what is the most in-demand skill." I said, "That's kind of what we can do." So by linking that, he went back and told all of his students, and got those students have a comparable competitive advantage in that labor market. The data analytics conference where we chatted. Later that same day, I talked to somebody at Fiat Chrysler, that's FCUSA, as you can see down at the bottom there. And I showed him this. I said, "Are you having trouble hiring for analytics people?" He said, "Yeah, I can't find them. There's nobody that has the skills I need." I said, "Well, what kind of skills do you need?" And he mentioned a few, and one of them was Agile. And I said, "Right here at this happy hour, and I found you somebody in Detroit that could get you graduates." And he said, "All I just have to do is sit here and drink." I said, "Absolutely." I went and got my colleague at the university. As they met, they talked to one another, and it turns out each one could see the other's office from their own office, and they had never met before. And he said, "Why don't your students learn Agile?" And he said, "They do know Agile. They're not putting it on their resume." And he said, "Well, send them all my way and do that." Now, we can't rely at scale for those kind of interactions to happen, but we do have a solution at scale that can actually help you move forward with your problem. Like the promise programs can help them make those connections between the college and career pathways. And often is what we do find is that those skills are taught by faculty, but we're not closing the loop that they're emphasized. We're teaching you this because it will help in your career, or the faculty might not know what is the most important skill. Time and again, people say, oh yeah, I see cascading style sheets. I teach that. I didn't know it was so important. I'll be sure to highlight that the next time I teach it and tell my students about it. By working with faculty, we can actually help them. And when they get jobs, that helps with accreditation and it helps with prestige of your institution and program. Thing that we've learned from Gallup is that by looking at the big six principles, which are here, is when faculty and we're involved in the promise work are really engaged with, it's through an internship or projects that take longer than a semester, or building those skills that kind of pursue your goals and dreams, those that actually matter. And they matter in this way. So earlier I mentioned that 34% of students, undergraduates, agreed that they were prepared for the labor market. What's interesting about that conversation is that that was on the previous slide that I just mentioned. So you look at that 23%, 23 plus 26, that's 49%. About half of students had one of those experiences. That's why we're getting about, and you see 23% of students were strongly agreed that college prepared you with the skills you need for job market success. They only had one of those experiences. But as they have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those experiences, that confidence and strongly agreeing that college prepares you with the skills you need for job market success goes way up. So going from 34% to 76%, the way you improve college is preparing you is by doing those things. Unfortunately, only 2% of the people that surveyed had all 6 of those experiences in their college career. But they did have a 76% satisfaction with that college prepared them to succeed. So one of the colleagues that I worked with at a school down in Georgia, in Atlanta, she had a PhD from Georgia Tech, and she was teaching in another state institution in the area. And she said, you know, I know what they teach at Georgia Tech and Emory, and I know my as much as those students, but they can't seem to get a job because they're at a state college or university and it doesn't say Georgia Tech or Emory on their diploma, even though they know as much as those other students. So what she did was she founded one of the first business analytics programs in the world, and she focused on applied statistical skills, but really trying to hone in on figuring out what skills are in demand and using those skills to actually attract talent that employers need. So in her world, in business analytics, if you look on the left-hand side, you see that there's accounting, SQL, project management, those kinds of things. So obviously you see there's an opportunity for her students right away to put project management as a skill that they learn, because that will give them a slight competitive advantage. She also said, my students actually learn R and SAS, which are 2 statistical programming languages. I want to see if that makes a difference, if that makes them more competitive, because in my program, they're learning both, whereas in other programs, maybe they're only learning one. So we did that analysis, and what we found is largest hire in her area was Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. Home Depot, Deloitte, IBM makes some sense. What was interesting was when we looked for R and SAS, we saw that Bank of America, which is headquartered in Charlotte, not in Atlanta, was actually hiring in Atlanta. They were hiring 60 people, and they were having real difficulty hiring. Job postings are about 4 or 5 to 1. That is, for every job that you have that's a unique posting, you try to post it in 4 or 5 other places. Well, Bank of America was posting at 17 to 1, and it was taking about 90 days to close positions. So she reached out to Bank of America with that insights and says, hey, I have an opportunity for an internship program. And as a result, her students are more competitive because they knew about jobs and opportunities to help them move forward. So at the beginning of the process in the student success cycle, we started talking about students in finding a meta major. Then when they find their major, we partner with faculty to actually provide them the insights that they need to understand what skills are in demand and how can we think about those skills to help our students get a job. And then towards the end, we can start looking at the talent and in the alumni insights, which jobs offer the biggest bang for your buck or your your educational investment faster. So if you're deciding between economics and finance or accounting, they might be similar, but they're not similar when it comes to recuperating your educational investment. Now, these data actually come from a colleague, Mike Itzkowitz. Maybe some of you know Mike at Third Way. He helped develop the college scorecard under President Obama. Interesting here is probably the biology one at the far end. This is looking at data for 2 years after students have left college in the data that he was looking at. A lot of biology majors go on to get masters or MDs, and when they get their medical doctorate, then they're recuperating their costs much quicker. But for many of these programs, you see mechanical engineering, high earning salary in just that second year, low time to recuperate costs. Psychology probably isn't going to improve substantially in kind of the short term of 0 to 2 years, but might be similar as many people get an MA and a PhD in those fields. So in exercise and kinesiology, it's kind of an open question if a PhD in kinesiology will actually return the investment. What we can do promise programs is through our alumni outcomes, help you look at the value of a degree, not just 1 year or 2 years out, but 5, 10, 15 years out. And how we can actually do that is if you provide us with the names of the students, we can match them in the workforce and we can tell you their job title, their employer, their certifications, what occupation field they're in, all kinds of things, their estimated wages, to see what that return on investment is. So as you continue to think and grow promise programs, I hope you'll keep that in mind because many promise programs are going to be questioned over the next few years about demonstrating value to the public. Should we continue this program during some challenging times in COVID? And can you demonstrate that this program has a return on investment? We can help you with that. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. I think I've covered a lot of this, but just to drive home the point that we can provide the leading insights to help you redefine success and redefine what student success means from enrollment, the time that you begin your academic career until you get your first job. That's what we're here to help all along the way. And even career coach stuff that I mentioned earlier, we have institutions that we partner and work with where they will take a career coach and those insights to high school college fairs to highlight, here's how we can help you if you're not sure what your major is. So very helpful for recruiting students into college and then keeping them in the programs that they need to through meta majors and then on to a timely completion and graduation and then into their first job as career. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can email me at john.barnshaw@mzbg. Let's have a conversation and I'd love to learn more about your promise program or how you're helping promise programs thrive. Do reach out as we are happy to help you and help move promise programs forward. Thanks very much and have a great rest of your conference.